29.
Please stand and join me in a prayer and a pledge. Heavenly Father, we ask for your presence as we gather to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills and judgments, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and for our citizens. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carla, could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Powell.
Here.
Mr. Gertz.
Here.
Mr. Lind.
Here.
Mr. Albrecht.
Here.
Mr. Lindeman.
Here.
Mr. Fischescher.
Here.
Mrs. Edichico. Here.
Okay, before we get started, first off, I want to welcome everybody back to Chambers.
So happy I don't have to
Long time
unmute
coming.
myself.
So,
Unmute. Unmute.
Yeah.
Don't confuse me.
Before we get started, there's a couple of things that we need to take care of. The first is a vote on adopting the new rules of council that have been passed around for the past 3-4 weeks. So I guess could I get a motion to accept or?
Can we have a discussion on that?
Sure.
I think that it would be appropriate for, I know all of the councilmen, I believe, has received them, and I don't know if the administration, I assume they have as well. But would it not be appropriate for us to publicize these somewhere in the public forum, whether on our webpage or some other forum before we decide to vote on it, so citizens may want to have comments or participate in the thoughts?
I always thought the council could set their own rules, to be honest with you.
I didn't say they couldn't.
I mean, you know, I guess if you want to do that, then we'll vote it down. If not, we'll vote for it.
I'd always kind of viewed it from a perspective that it's a living document that we can change at any time we would
want
like.
it.
So
That's why it's out of the code now.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the new rules and regulations governing council procedure.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Edichico, second by Mr. Lind, to adopt the rules and regulations. Could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Powell.
yes,
Mr. Gertz.
No.
Mr. Lind.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman.
No.
Mr. Fischescher.
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
Okay, the rules pass. We have, Tony, first off, do you want to put the budget on as a first read tonight, or do you want to hold that off?
I think it would, the budget, the ordinance itself is very simple, so I don't know that we need to, other than, and thinking we should probably, because if council as a whole decides to have another meeting next Tuesday on the budget, then we need 3 readings. Theoretically, I guess that could be stopped, and I don't want to call a special council meeting a third time. So yes, I'll make a motion that we add the simple ordinance that approves the budget for its first reading this evening, so that we can make sure it gets passed by the 20th, which is late, really.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Gertz, second by Ms. Edichico, to add the ordinance referenced as budget 2021. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell.
yes,
Mr. Gertz.
Yes?
Mr. Lind.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman.
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher.
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
And we have one other ordinance that needs to be added. That would be the ordinance amending the sections of the code that dealt with the rules of council. And again, that was circulated among members. Could I have a motion on that?
I'll make
the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Lindeman, second by Ms. Edichico to add that ordinance. Roll call, please.
Mr.
But I understand where, this is the ordinance, I thought the law director said we didn't need to have an ordinance on.
This is to amend
Just to pull
present
stuff out.
code,
Take the
deleting,
numbers off.
deleting certain sections and changing the rest. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell.
Yes.
Mr. Gertz.
No.
Mr. Lind.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman.
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher.
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
Okay, that is added also.
Is now the appropriate time to talk about adding a meeting next Tuesday, or?
We could do that.
Okay.
I make a motion that we add a meeting next Tuesday to go over the budget ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lynn, second by Mr. Powell to add a meeting next Tuesday.
7:30?
Hmm?
7:30?
7:30, and that will be the 13th, with purpose, the sole purpose of discussion and possible passage of the budget for 2021. Could I have a roll call?
Mr. Powell.
Yes.
Mr. Gertz.
Yes.
Mr. Lind.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman.
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher.
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
I'm sorry, it's 22 budget. All right, I think we covered all that stuff. We have, unless there's any objection, the minutes from the June 15th meeting, which was a regular session, will be approved as written. Okay, audience participation. If you would like to address, remind you, state your name, address, and you have a 5-minute limit.
Thank you very much. Robert J. Ashbrook, 221 Walnut Street, Reading, Ohio. My remarks this evening pertain to something that council just acted upon, specifically the rules of council. So I asked you, gentlemen and lady, to consider what I have to say and perhaps revisit those rules. I prepared these documents, and I'll give it to Carla. I would hope that she would print it in its entirety in the meeting minutes. Unfortunately, I ran out of ink on the way over here, so I'll stumble through it and get you a fresh copy.
Thanks.
There was a time when the real work of government was often conducted in the smoke-filled back rooms of local taverns. Fortunately, calls for reform and a desire to properly engage the electorate in the conduct of civic affairs has resulted in the passage of various open meeting laws. Laws intended to ensure that the deliberations of public bodies take place in full view of constituents who are then afforded an opportunity to participate. As a result of these laws, the underlying facts and arguments for and against any vote or decision are openly discussed and become part of a permanent public record. The ability of the common man to have proper access to elected officials in a public forum is central to a properly functioning representative government. Emergency modifications to open meeting laws to accommodate COVID concerns have compromised that access for the last 15 months. While Zoom meetings have been beleaguered with a range of challenges, procedural, technical, and production in nature. Technical difficulties with garbled audio aside, those citizens who eschew technology for any number of reasons have been shut out of the public square entirely. This evening's return to chambers is a welcome development for many of your constituents we see by this evening's attendance. However, proposed changes to council rules leave me with concerns that the spirit, if not the letter of the Sunshine Laws, will once more be strained. The reduction in the number of scheduled meetings will, I fear, give rise to several potential abuses. The likelihood of inappropriately invoking the emergency clause to pass legislation for reason only of expediency. This particular issue is already a problem that presents far too frequently owing to last-minute preparation of ordinances and other reasons. This practice can limit deliberations and deny citizens the right to review and comment on any matter that may be of importance to them, like tonight. Hardly what one would characterize as responsive government. With fewer meetings, council members may resort to obtaining answers to their questions through individual emails or private phone conversations. A legitimate practice, but one that is fraught with problems, not least of which is that the same answer will likely not be given to all who ask. We all know how the telephone game can distort a conversation, so it is of great importance then that public decisions be made based on deliberations heard by all participating in the vote. Moreover, debating the matter openly and live in chambers results in a more complete understanding of the issues, and as one council member's question gives rise to a related one by another member. This need for a common knowledge base by all members may tempt some to engage in a series of group emails to discuss concerns. The law director has admonished many members of council regarding this potentially very real sunshine law violation as it concerns this practice. All of this strongly urges resumption of the previous, well-established practice of meeting weekly to provide for the required 3 readings compressed into a 3-week time window, and to maintain adequate opportunity for citizen participation, and to ensure that complex city matters can be properly and thoroughly explored within a documented public forum. To that point, I would urge council to arrange that all committee meetings be conducted before or after the second Tuesday's council meeting, and that these too be televised and recorded. And in a strong mayor form of government, many of council's votes will be on matters heavily involving the administration. Citizens deserve to hear on the record any arguments for or against administrative initiatives offered by them that may otherwise be communicated only to council. To that end, council should extend a permanent request for their attendance. As you can tell, I prepared these remarks anticipating that I would have the opportunity to address you, gentlemen and lady, before you voted on this matter. I suspect that there are other opportunities or other instances during the last 15 months when citizens' voices have been shut out, and I urge you once again to return to the previous set of council rules.
Does anyone else want to address council?
Don Likens, 8415 Reading Road. I have owned property and lived here for about 30 years. I'm kind of with this guy. I don't know what rules you passed, but I like open meetings and open discussions. So I don't know him, but I'm kind of with him. And that's not why I'm here. So, but I'll get into this and I'll come back for another discussion about that. But thank you for bringing that up. Thanks to Katie, she brought the ordinance for residential registration system for residential rental property and tenants. And Katie, I want to thank you for your great service and thank you for bringing it to the public forum. I wouldn't have known about it had you not posted it. I know I'm against it, as you well know, but nevertheless, thank you for your service and everybody for their service. And Katie, you're very public with your things, and I appreciate that. I don't think we need this residential rental registration system, especially you don't need it for my tenants. It's an overreach for my local government, and I will continue to fight against it. And I think it's probably unconstitutional for you to ask for my customers. But here's why I'm against it. We already have an ordinance on the books for owners to maintain their properties and can easily put liens on these properties. You know, I get letters all the time, and I get complaints and calls from the city about my grass and other issues, and I address them quickly. As a landlord, I already register my property and tenants with the tax department of the city. And I know you can't get the tax records, but are you sure you can't get them? Pass an ordinance to get them. I already give them to the tax department freely. So I give them there. I also, as a landlord, I register my rental properties with the county. I don't have to give them tenant information, but I have to tell them what are rental properties, get that information from the county. I spoke with Rick Martin, who you guys know. He runs the code enforcement. He said he's always been able to get landlord information from the county's auditor site. Never has he ever not been able to get the owner's information. Now, whether it's right or not, but that's who they're sending the tax bills to. So he's always been able to send his letters of compliance to landlords and other owners. So here are my questions. Tenants are my customers, and I guard their personal information closely. Are you going to ask other businesses in Reading for their customers? Are you going to get all the customer names from BP and McDonald's and Circle K? Why are you getting my customer names? Where will it end? Once tenant names are given to the city, my competitors can do open records requests and get that information. They're going to know the names and addresses of all of my customers. That's not fair. Why doesn't the city get the owner and landlord information from the county auditor? If the city has issues with properties, can't the city fix these serious issues on the city's dime and then put a lien against the property? Other communities do that. I lived in Miami Township once, and if your grass was too high, they would cut your grass and send you a bill. If you didn't pay the bill, they would lien it, put a lien on it. Can the city please provide reasons why this ordinance was created? What problem are we trying to solve with it? Why are you hurting me with this? It's going to take time out of my busy schedule to provide a third set of information that I already provide to my government. Remember, I'm on your side. I pay taxes. My tenants, I register them with the tax department, you know. And lastly, why won't the service director, Patrick Ross, respond to my phone calls, Mr. Mayor, or emails regarding this issue? I have emailed him. I have left messages with this man, and no response. Actually, I haven't had a response from him on any of my issues for months and months and months. I expect more from our city officials, okay? And this isn't the last time I'm going to be up here until I hear of some changes. Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Katie, would you like to address that?
Yes. This is going off the email that you sent earlier, and we've actually talked about this at length on Facebook mostly, through email about the properties. I think I've answered most of these questions. Going through your list, the issue is that we can't find the owner or contact information for a lot of these property owners. Now, I know Rick Martin may have told you differently, but our fire chief, he spoke at length in a few of my committee meetings about the troubles that he has contacting owners. I know our building departments had issues with the same. Again, the tax department cannot release that information. We can't pass an ordinance to make them. That's not in our hands. That is a law that is beyond us. That information is kept within the tax department. The Hamilton County Auditor's information, as Dave and I discovered, is very inaccurate, and it's missing a lot of rental properties. A lot of single-family homes are not on there. It does not match up with our fire department's list, so that's not a reliable source to get this information. Will we be asking other businesses for their customer names? No. I've explained on Facebook why that's in there. If a tenant is having an issue with the landlord, we can contact them that way. If a landlord's having an issue with the tenant, we can contact that way. If the tenant's living in unsafe conditions, we can find the owner of the property. We've discussed that at length. Where will it end? It will end with this ordinance. This will not be shared publicly. People cannot open records, request people's private information. This will only be accessed by city officials, like our fire chief, building department. That's it. That's all this is going to be used for. And again, the county auditor's list is not accurate. It's missing properties. As far as cutting the grass and sending a property a bill, there are a few properties in Reading that are abandoned that I know that we do cut the grass on, and we don't get paid, is from what I understand. We do bill them, and it goes nowhere, or
The only time it gets paid is if the process is a short sale and we have it recorded on the water bill, and that's years down the line, and so
Yes.
we're only as good as keeping those records, and that's the only time it gets paid back.
yes. So having a centralized list for our building department or our service department to access would take care of that issue. Why was this, you want a list of reasons why this ordinance was created? Again, we've discussed this at length as well, going back to, I believe, March when I brought this up. It is in our city's master plan. It's something discussed in there, and in fact, this is a shortened version of what's in our city's master plan. We're not doing yearly inspections. We're not charging property owners. There's no fee unless the information is not completed. We're not.
Administration fought that fee as well.
Yes, there's no fee to register. Other communities do have fees to register or yearly inspection fees, and if you don't pass that inspection, you have another fee on top of that. We're not doing any of that. This is just a centralized list so that if we run into issues with the property, we know who to contact, and we have their contact information. And again, as I have explained, we have a lot of out-of-town, out-of-state property owners, a lot of large businesses that are buying up property within the city. It's become an issue for realtors, for families looking for homes, for the neighbors of these properties, because they buy them up, they let them fall into disrepair. So it has become a major property maintenance issue. And then again, it falls into our building department trying to enforce that, and then trying to get a hold of this huge company or somebody that's out of town or out of state that may not have current contact information listed with the Hamilton County auditors or even their tax forms. So yeah, we've talked about this a lot. I've talked about this a lot. I've been very open, as you said on Facebook. I have posted the ordinance in its entirety for people to read. We've read it in its entirety at council. I've been contacted by a lot of people about this, and it's actually been positive. A lot of people are happy about this. There's been a lot of people within the city that unfortunately have had to deal with properties on their street, and some neighbors that didn't take care of them, that were renters, and people are happy that we're doing something. And again, this is modeled after what some other cities have done to handle this issue, but not even to the extent that they're doing. Again, there's no fee. There's no inspections needed, no yearly inspections, anything like that.
And I opposed this as well, Mr. Likens, until we came to that agreement, that there would be no fees, no licenses. And Mr. Martin has great trouble finding property owners as well, and it hampers his. So I don't know when you caught Ricky at a bad moment, but he has trouble too. Our fire chief is for this, our safety service director, again, because of the problems we have of taking months and months and months and going around the world trying to locate people and then trying to get them to be responsible. You know, on your other comment, I've asked for years and years here, and hopefully there will be an ordinance soon, for Mr. Ross to have a full-time secretary. In 2003 and years before, when I walk into City Hall, there were 3 full-time people, on our side of the wall to help a safety service director. Now 3 full-time people or 3 part-time people with us. It's hurt. Mr. Ross, our police chief and others here have responded to you as best they can. They've responded to you often. I've witnessed the responses. They haven't been irresponsible. You know, Mr. Ross right now at times is doing 3 and 4 people's jobs, and we apologize for that. I've been asking for help for years, you know, and people here have been beating him up. You know, we're going to see who wants to solve a problem and who just wants to beat somebody up here soon. So we'll put out an ordinance to replace one of my part-time administrative assistants with a full-time person, so that the same person is answering calls day in and day out. You know, instead of maybe it being one of 4 or 5 people, at times he's the city clerk because he's the only person here, and we'd be shutting down City Hall if he didn't do that. You know, he's very, very busy. You know, we have 10,000 residents, 300 and some odd businesses. You know, we're growing, we're inviting new businesses, getting new businesses here, new employees here. Tax base has gone up. His hands are full. We're doing great things. We're sorry when some things slide through the cracks. But anyway, we respond to you as quickly as we can and have a multitude of time, and you know that, and I know that, and we respond. But what Katie said was right. They had a hard time convincing me of allowing administration to support, you know, this bill at all. But it's for the good of our city so that we can move forward and solve some problems, and administration supports on that. No fees, okay? We don't want to make it just like with exterior property maintenance. You know, Ricky Martin in some years has written 1,300, 1,400 letters and taken 5, 6, 7 people to court. We don't want people's money. We don't want to fine people. We want people to be able to put money back into their businesses or back into their properties. They have been few and far between. 7, 8, 9 out of 13, 14, 1,500. Ricky works with people. But this was necessary to address issues in a timely manner. So,
Well, I just, before you vote on this thing, I know the vote isn't tonight, but the same people who skirt the county's website that you can't find, they're paying their property taxes, they're not going to fill this thing out either. You're penalizing the good people like me who will fill it out because we're law-abiding. These deadbeat landlords or out-of-country landlords, they're not going to fill it out either.
okay, but can I respond to that?
Yeah.
We are far more aggressive than the county. Our tax office is far more aggressive than the state of Ohio that wants to start collecting our taxes. And our offices here will be far more aggressive than what you'll get at a county level, which is why it's good that you live in a small community like Reading.
I know, sir, but you can get that
Okay, we're not going to start a back and forth.
information. Okay, well, lastly, you can get that owner information from the county's treasurer tax department where they pay their taxes to. Go get it, work with the county to get it. Don't burden us.
I've got a response from our treasurer. Unfortunately, he was not able to be here tonight. He states, the ordinance requiring registration for all residential property owners in Reading has absolutely nothing to do with what we do in the tax department. Regardless of what council decides, the tax department will continue collecting rental property information on a monthly basis. The information we collect is very different and is absolutely confidential and is not shared with anyone else in the city, period. And that is not a local law, that is a state law, if I recall, Tony,
That's correct.
or possibly a federal law.
It's a state law.
And just as a final comment, if you're a responsible property owner, this will harm you in no way, shape, or form.
I'd like to comment when the time comes, when you get the chance.
You want to do that when the ordinance comes?
No, I'd not do it now, because I
Okay.
totally agree with this gentleman here, Mr. Likens. First of all, because the treasurer is outlining his position doesn't mean that he condones this ordinance either. I don't want that to be an assumption that because he is taking a firm stand about his office, because I've talked to him about this as well, and I was the treasurer at one time in the city. So his taking a position about his particular obligations cannot be interpreted that he's supporting this particular ordinance. I don't think that's fair. Number two, again, as I mentioned earlier, about the fact that we are tonight passing a change in how we do business, which ironically, I think is comical because we're going to meet next week anyway. you know, we passed an ordinance, we ain't gonna meet on the second and fourth Tuesday, but we're gonna meet next week. Would not have had to have a special vote to do that. And I find that those other meetings are very helpful because you can discuss such things as this at some length. And here we are tonight, we're trying to do it at the beginning of our council meeting, which is one of the first and third. I do not support this ordinance. I do think that the fact that there are going to be people who are not, I mean, we say there's no cost or anything, but I think there's a cost factor to the owner of the property, especially if you own, if you were Lakeshore Apartments that has 400 units, and they're going to have to, on a regular basis, be reporting this. Now, I know they have to report to the tax department about tenants, but also this, I believe this ordinance requires that anybody over the age of 18 has to be reported. I don't know about the constitutionality of what having to do with making the person have to report. If it's about income, you could be 15 years old and have a job and make a lot of money, and you're not reporting 15-year-olds. And then if you report that anybody 18 years of old has to be listed, and then you have some group or people who may want to live together in whatever lifestyle they choose, are we not then announcing what their particular persuasion of life might be? I don't agree that that's even constitutional. Now, Dave and I could litigate that, but I can't do it on council. Maybe after they throw me off someday, we could litigate that. I'd take that case. I think it'd be fun to do. But I don't agree that that's fair. I think that we're treating the symptoms of a problem. We're not really treating a solution to any problems here. My opinion, we need to evaluate the whole building department and choose to come and explore. By the way, that gentleman you were talking to, you were supporting, that's Bob Ashbrook. He's running for council again. He was a councilman once before, so maybe you should talk with him about your feelings. But anyway, the fact that the symptoms we're treating is not really the illness. And I think that, as I mentioned, we talked today, as you're well aware. I'm not going to hide that fact. When I was a magistrate in Laughlin, I attended a seminar some years ago, and I believe Dave might have been there. There are methods where you can develop a court system within your own county that's more aggressive. The reason I say we're treating the symptoms and not really the illness is we got a piece of property that, and I have the greatest respect for Todd Owens, don't get me wrong, the fire chief. I think he's done a wonderful job, and he goes beyond his duty, because there's a property up on Hunt Road that's been condemned. It's supposed to be torn down. I think it's been about 2 or 3 years. And why we cannot effectively get that building torn down is ridiculous to me. I think it's anybody that's, again, an attractive nuisance, somebody goes to live in the place, or kids playing around it, it could collapse. I've driven by it several times. So I think we need to reevaluate the whole building department, provide better methods. I don't know that we may not even stay with what we have. You can contract these services out to other sources. It may be less expensive. None of that, I think, has been evaluated adequately. And, as far as owner occupancy and problems we're having with, I think we have as many issues that property owners who are living in the premises that don't take care of the premises. Probably some are worse than the landlords. I have clients in my business. Got an eviction I'll probably be pursuing next week because the tenant isn't taking care of the property, and the owner is not getting any cooperation from them. And it's a matter of income. I'm sure it is with you. You don't want a crummy tenant in there that's tearing something up. And now, do we have those that cause problems? Well, yes, we do. But I think we can come up with a better method than this. And the one thing that bothers me is that, again, before we ever act on this, I would like to see a communication sent out. I want to thank Todd also for this, because he provided me 80 pages of rental properties and the owners of those properties. And as you pointed out, they're also on the website of the Hamilton County Auditor. Now, do we have every one of them? I don't know the answer to that. I do believe, though, that if you have a company, say Texas or wherever they are, and they own 2 or 3 pieces of real estate that were foreclosed upon, that happened years ago. Barney Frank and Chris Dodd destroyed the housing industry about 20 years ago, and there were companies that were foreclosing and they didn't take care of the properties. They had such a long list of repairs and locations. But anyone who wants to do business in the state of Ohio, any company, they have to go through the Secretary of State's office and declare and establish what's called a statutory agent. Now, what a statutory agent is a human person. And many times companies will appoint their lawyers, because that's a way to get, to be blunt, that's a way to get feeders for doing lawsuits. When they get in trouble, then you get notified and you can pursue it. I don't happen to do that, but a statutory agent has to be registered with the state of Ohio. Now, if that company doesn't do that correctly, then initiative can be taken through, I believe, the state government to eliminate them as a company that can do business in the state of Ohio, and take initiative to file suit to terminate some type of ownership relationship that they have with the property. So I do believe that what you're saying, Mr. Likens, is pretty accurate. I think that you can go and find the people that are in there. Now, are there going to be exceptions to that? Yes. Are there methods that we could explore, I believe, as other counties have done, creating a separate court system that deals with nothing but issues about lack of taking care of property? There could even be quick takes, they call them. I only was in the seminar for about 2 or 3 hours, so I don't have all the answers, but I do know that there are methods that can be explored, and I think that would be another alternative that we could use, rather than invoking upon residents to that own property. And it's rather interesting. I looked through the list that Todd gave me. You'd be surprised how many we have very fine people like yourself that own, one particular resident owns about 12 or 15 properties in Reading. So, you know, I think that we need to take a step back on this. I think we need to notify all of the citizens in Reading through a mailer or some form of communication, minimally the ones we know who are property owners that have rental units, at least give them an opportunity, because it's up for a third vote in 2 weeks. And to my knowledge, I mean, I look at some of the Facebook stuff, but I still believe that we need to have communication directly, and I could be put in some form of notice in the water bill or some other way that I think we could communicate with the people. So I think that we need to be, I'm not going to vote to support this or suspend the rules. I think it's an improper ordinance to do at this time.
Does anybody else want to address Mr.
I'll be very brief because it's been a long discussion, but I agree with you and I disagree with you. I think the first thing, if we need this information, why don't we work with the auditor and have him clean up his site if he doesn't have all the information? Why should we create a new group of people that's going to go out? First of all, Mr. Gertz just said that we have 80 pages of people that own properties. So how many can we be missing? 80 pages. It's a lot of property owners. The mayor said that it's going to be more aggressive because it's local. I got involved in a property in May 11th. And those people, the property has been cleaned up as of the 30th of June. It's part of my report tonight, so that's as far as I'll say about that now. But the other thing is that Mr. Ross needs help. I've talked to the fire chief. No uncertain terms. He doesn't think his department's going to be able to handle this. Patrick, we just talked about Patrick being overloaded and needs help. So are we going to go to the police chief, or we just said that Mr. Martin, I mean, I think his computer went out and his printer went out, and he was when I talked to him, he was backed up, say the least. So who exactly is going to take care of this? Now, somebody suggested that it could go online. And maybe the information, some way, somehow, if we talk with the treasurer, it could be shared. Maybe the information comes here first, and then the tax department takes it from this side. If we're going to get all the information, then why can't we share it back the other way? Anyway, those are just my comments.
Dave?
Speaking to that, I took the time, I cross-referenced the auditor's list and ours. There were ones that were on ours that weren't on the auditor's, and vice versa. Substantial amount that frankly weren't. As far as Patrick being overloaded and stuff, I agree. That's why I encourage us to embrace automation. A fillable form on the website. You go, you fill it out, it populates the database, and that's all she wrote. Nobody has to touch it then. And it just populates the database, and people that need it have access to that database. That, it's done all the time with fillable forms like that. So I would encourage us, as we're implementing this, if it passes, to embrace the automation and look at doing that. If we don't have the manpower, then take advantage of the technology. Another issue, and this is anecdotal evidence, but this week I was driving up my street and there was a yard that had 8-inch high grass. I said, okay, I'll look it up. Looked it up. It's in the name of an LLC. Do they have a rental registration? No. They haven't filed a rental registration. Have they filed a rental registration for any other properties in Reading? No. Have they filed a rental registration for any other properties in the county that I checked? No. You look at the conveyance form. Is the property leased to people? They check no on the conveyance form. So, I understand where you're coming from as well, but, it's frustrating. We just want the information, and we want the people, we want the information so we can get the compliance, and that's all we really want.
And that's basically what it boils down to.
Mr. Albright?
And just to circle back to one item that was mentioned as far as notifying people, we did discuss in the committee meeting sending a notification out to all citizens through the water bill. We also talked about in the committee meeting on the form that if you own the, let's say, Lakeshore or a lot of the apartment complexes, that takes you to a different form where you don't list every tenant. But it just basically gives the contact information if that would be needed for the apartment complexes.
Mr. Albright?
One of my concerns with this is the fact that we aren't making any provisions for fees to address the issue, nor providing additional personnel. I mean, we've already reduced the amount of hours that Rick spends doing this kind of stuff, or the stuff he does. And, this is going to be a lot of work, or can be a lot of work, and we don't have the people. So, I mean, it's all very nice and good, but again, whether it's fees or whatever, somehow or another, we got to make provisions for being able to address the whole situation here.
That's what I was trying to say. I think, yes, it's a good idea, but I think that it needs to be worked on a little bit so that it helps and satisfies everybody and not puts a burden on one particular department.
Okay. Tom, I think you and I are the only two that haven't said anything. Okay. Does anybody else want to address council?
My name is Lisa Brewer, and I'm hearing all this, and
What's your address, Lisa?
At 8515 Reading. What does this have to do with the tenants? I guess that's, I'm just not understanding that. Why you're asking for the tenants' information when it's really the owners that you want? That's what I just don't understand.
Well, we've had issues where tenants have been living in unsafe conditions, and we were, from what I have been told, unable to contact the owner, find out or even be able to get a hold of anybody to take care of those issues. That's one reason. We've had, on the flip side, owners that have had problem tenants that we haven't been able to get any contact information on. So we've had issues where sex offenders have rented homes nearby schools. And again, jumped through hoops to get a hold of the owner of the home. They acted like they had no idea who they were even renting to. So it's really a way to deal with those sort of issues. Again, it's not public information for anyone, and as Dave said, this isn't a program that will actually need to be managed. It is automated, it's online, it's a database. If there's an issue with the property, that's when the building department or the fire chief or the safety service director can go into the computer and look it up just like anything else that they would need to look up. So it's not any sort of, filing, paperwork, anything like that. It's all automated, basically. It'll be through the website and only accessible within the city officials.
Until it's not, right?
All right. Carla, do we have any communications other than the letter that was already recited?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll start with the mayor's report. Mayor Bemis.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. It is great to be back to live meetings, and it's great to see everybody here. I hope all of you know it wasn't anything we ever wanted to do to shut this building down. We have the unique situation here where this building houses our first responders, our fire and EMS officials, our police department, our water department, our tax department. And, I, for one, want to thank God we came out of this pandemic, and I know it isn't over yet, doing fairly well. We did have some employees get the virus. Luckily, they made it through very, very well. But, we've been very, very busy here at City Hall the last 15 months, very, very busy. And one of them, again, was protecting our vital employees and our first responders here. And, we thank everybody, for their cooperation. Dave even moved Mayor's Court, which was a major to-do, again, to try to protect, our first responders. And we did well. And we were able to continue to respond to emergencies and serve our people well. We were also able, with closed doors here, to concentrate on communications with our businesses, our bigger businesses, to see what kind of responses we were going to have to make to revenue streams. And, we helped our smaller businesses get in touch with federal and state reps to, help them to try to survive and to help market them. All in all, we've done very, very well. And thank God for that. On the other hand, we lost some incredible members of our community over this. Wonderful people from very wonderful families, and I want to offer my condolences to all of them. In the last 15 months, Reading's lost, again, a lot of incredible people, as we do every year, and, we mourn with them. But, we thank God again, all in all. We did very, very well here, remained very, very busy here, got a lot done here. I think we collected $100,000 less in taxes than normal last year, and we were prepared for $500,000 or more in revenue losses. We aggressively worked with MSD and Duke and made more than that amount up, in right-of-way acquisition dollars. Major projects are happening in our community here. The Duke pipeline we didn't want, we fought, we're still fighting. But that being said, we've worked with them to make sure it was the safest, most efficient project. Once we were mandated that they could do the work, there will be major improvements over it. There's major improvements starting at the south end of this community that we've worked on for years and years with the state of Ohio, with the county, with ODOT, with Amberley Village, with the city of Cincinnati, with Sycamore Township. They're starting there. We're getting a new bridge at the north end. Thurmridge Drive, $2 million project, 8-inch water main underneath, which is vital to this community. It'll help our school out. It's a project we wanted to do for 6, 7, 8 years, finally got a $1 million grant. We got $400,000 in grant dollars to solve a major box culvert issue that was collapsing and had collapsed in an area. Had it totally collapsed, we would have had lakes on McGuire Lane and loss of homes and who knows, major, major damage to our property. It was a project that went far longer than we liked. I was a little bit frustrated, as was everybody else, with the timing and the time it took, but a major, major project. North Street, we were just awarded another $280,000 in grant dollars, so East North Street will get a lot of work. Some sewer projects coming up that are mandated to get done, and we'll, again, have already received right-of-way dollars on them, and we'll get paving projects out of it. So, a lot through all of the changes, all the cancellation, gut-wrenching cancellations. Memorial Day Parade, Memorial Day Festival, and 4th of July things, things that really were hard for all of us here. We come through it very well, and want to thank a multitude of people for that. To answer some questions, some people wonder why administration isn't at council meetings. And, I listened over and over again. I listened to one council member after another give a report, in large part supplied to them by administration. Every council meeting that's held here, 5 pages minimum of material from administration freely given to council members. A lot of times they read them word for word and then say administration doesn't do anything. I just love it. My wife and my family and I, we just sit there and say, goodness gracious, they want us to come and sit on their laps and read the reports for them. We type them out and hand them to them. I got that thick in the last year and a half of information from administration to city council. My hopes in the future is council can get back to business-like meetings, professional business-like meetings. You talk about people that we have a hard time getting to obey the laws. We have a hard time getting people to obey council rules. It's unbelievable. Incredibly unbelievable. And all the faults of the administrations. It's like all the kids, they don't study for tests, flunk the test, and blame it on the teacher. We are available. We are available. I'll show you all. You all come back to my office. The materials that we give to council each and every week. Each and every week. No thanks, no recognition. No, we don't need it. Don't want it. We gladly share it, and we should gladly share it. But then in the same meeting, we don't do a doggone thing here. Again, when I used to be on council, I was on council for 4 years, prepared my own reports. I didn't go into a deep depression when the mayor or safety service director wasn't there. I did my homework, did my research, had my report, and completed it. Never needed anything from administration that I didn't seek and get myself. But there were 3 full-time people over there, full-time recreation director, full-time city clerk, full-time payroll clerk, 3 full-time people that are now part-time to us. And who did it harm? The mayor and safety service director increased our work. And when we had a full-time recreation director, we paid a firm $15,000 a year to manage our pool. Now we manage our own pool. And we do more things on our own here. We had to do more with less. In 2003 and 2002, we were spending $800,000 more than we were bringing in a $6.5 million general fund budget. We had to make the cuts. When I came in the 1st of January, everybody in town thought we'd be in a fiscal emergency within 6 months. Didn't happen. Took a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of pay cuts. A service department went from 20 full-time people to 13. Every time somebody retired, we didn't rehire them. We've worked very, very hard here. And all in all, not that we need any thanks for it, because we don't, but then when people are absolutely misrepresenting the truth about it and saying we're not working, it is really intolerable to me. It's down and outrightly shameful, to tell you the honest truth. We're open for all the help we can get. We try to address every single problem we can. We're understaffed. Everybody here makes a decent wage. Nobody here is getting rich. But I tell you, I love working here. It's an honor to be our mayor. I'm around positive people all day, every day, that work very, very hard, come to work with a smile on their face, and work very, very hard to improve our city. And I listen to council meetings, and you'd think we were in a deep depression and should just jump off the cliff. We are incredibly blessed. I envy no one. Envy no one. We are financially stable. Any debt we have is funded. And we are principally fundamentally sound as well. You know, as I hire people or give people the oath of office, I ask two things of them: to be polite and respectful to everyone. Every life matters here. If you're going to trip and fall somewhere in this world, you're lucky if you trip and fall in Reading. We don't care what you look like, where you came from, who you are, what you believe. We care for you very, very quickly, very, very efficiently, and give it all we got. I love it here. It's wonderful here at City Hall. And we're working on making it better every day, every single day. And again, massive amounts in grants. We'll spend close to $2 million in grants in this community here. You know, I'm part of an integrating committee. They give out 15 road grants each year. You know, we get 1, 2, sometimes 3 of them. We work very hard, have a very good engineering firm. What's payroll gone up in this community? About $80 million in the last 9, 10 years. You know, and earnings tax revenues have increased significantly, and we're spending it all very, very well. You know, we've never done anything to hide anything from anybody here, ever. You know, well, I'm totally, you know, we should end televised council meetings. Some communities ban them. It's $40,000 a year that we could put in. For instance, you know, the recreation budget in this community used to be over $350,000 a year. Now it's $150,000. Our parks need a lot of help. We got 1 park employee, and that's if they don't need him somewhere else. If there's a water main break, we got 0 park employees. $40,000 a year could go a long way towards hiring again at least another full-time park employee 8, 9 months a year when we need them the most. To hire a secretary for our city manager, probably the only city manager in the county that does not have a secretary. In fact, he's the secretary to everybody else. You know, the water clerk gets sick, he's the water clerk. Payroll clerk gets sick, he's payroll clerk. You can ask the auditor, he's a tremendous help to the auditor. To the building department, a part-time building department, 8 hours a week. You know, we have discussed the building department, I heard that mentioned earlier. We have discussed the building department. If we'd taken all the minutes, we'd have the Encyclopedia Britannica filled up here. The reason it hasn't changed is because we spend significantly less here because that's all we can afford. $33,000 a year for the last 25 years without an increase, and we couldn't even get council to give the guy, you know, another $10,000 a year for a secretary to answer phone calls and do filing, which would have meant he could have spent 8 hours a week doing professional building department work instead of being a clerk and a filer for 3 of the 8 hours a week. Couldn't get him to budge. You know, some people here would rather beat up on us than solve a problem. It's a shame. It's a shame. So we accomplished a lot, and we're always looking for more and more help. But all in all, we are a community that should kneel down and thank God each and every day. I'll tell you another great story. The Port Authority to Cincinnati is heaven sent to us. The Dow property was a Tier 1 chemical facility for over 60 years. No one wanted that property. You know, it was like our stadium. You couldn't give it away. You know, you couldn't. You know, you're looking right off the bat at 29 acres and a minimum of $7 million before you can put a shovel in the ground and start building something. You know, who wants a piece of property? You want 29 acres with a $7 million bill? I don't know, maybe in Hawaii, maybe you would, but it's tough here. But they're heaven sent, and we're working with them. And we're not going to go after them, you know, to board up buildings that they're seeking dollars to tear down. You know, people shouldn't trespass, people shouldn't vandalize. And it's a shame in this world that we have laws that protect criminals. You know, we're law-abiding citizens, which they had half the laws to protect them that the criminals have. You know, getting back to you, Mr. Likens, if you're a responsible property owner, what Katie has proposed here and what I hope they pass will not harm you one little bit. I am a true small government person that doesn't want government in my business at all. That being said, when people are doing harm to other people by being irresponsible, we have to respond. And that's what we try to do. I was going to read this. I don't know what else to say. We got a couple big events coming up here in our city. Goodness gracious, if I find them. I think August 3rd is our National Night Out. August 3rd, Canning Park, 5 to 8 p.m. Come on down. It's the opportunity for people to get to know our police department better. As your mayor, I have worked very, very hard to have a community oriented police department. My dad always said it when he was born, he was related to half the valley and married into the other half. I figured the police department would get me in more trouble because of relatives and friends getting arrested. And I had a son arrested by the Reading Police Department 6 times, by the way. He's no longer with us. They weren't able to save him. They did their best. August 3rd, come to Caney Car. Meet our police officers. They are public servants. They want to know you. They want you to get to know them. Please come on down. It's always a great event. August 28th, the Ladies Auxiliary of the American Legion is having what they're calling a Taste of Reading at Caney Park, noon to 11 p.m. There's going to be some bands, Reading High School band. Again, it gets a chance to get to know this community better. You'll come on and help them out. The Legion has been on the ropes for years, needs all the support that they can get. Anybody that was at the festival realizes they need more help. You know, the guy who ran the festival knows he's going to get all kind of criticism in fact, it was the week before the 4th of July. He hopes he does, because he's going to look at people and say, step right on up, I got a job for you. So we're hoping people come on down. September 22nd will be our Reading Bridal District's Fall in Love event on Benson Street. We closed Benson Street that day. You know, it's very, very difficult to do that. It'll be closed from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. midnight. You know, that's hard on some of the businesses on Benson Street. And but anyway, we'll close it down and have a nice event there. And anyway, you know, just to end, you know, I want everybody to know. Again, we're public servants here. I tell everybody that. We're public servants. We're out here to work for everybody. We work hard. I want to thank everybody I work with. I'm blessed. I'm the luckiest mayor alive. Luckiest mayor alive. Best city manager, best police chief, fire chief, chief of public works, parks and recreation director, city workers that do everything we can. We are frustrated any time we cannot help someone out. We do our best. I also want to thank the many, many people. We have, you know, you talk about working together. It's the only way Reading and communities like us are ever going to make it. We have to work with our churches. We need ball fields. We go down to St. Pete's. They help us out. You know, the schools need areas to work and put on plays and do concerts. Churches open up their doors. There's wonderful ministries. If anybody's bored in this community, go to any one of the churches in this community. Wonderful, wonderful ministries that do wonderful things every single day of the week, above and beyond. Wonderful schools in this community that do above and beyond, including prepare our children for what would you call it all? An incredibly challenging, I guess is the best polite word you can use for the future of our country. They prepare them well. They do very well. We need to work cooperatively with them all day, every day, as well as we have generous businesses, unbelievable volunteer organizations here. People to give hours upon hours upon hours, week after week after week, year after year after year. And as well, I invite people, please, you know, if you can help us out here, there's only one way we're going to be as safe as we can be, and that's if everybody participates. Get to know your neighbor, look out for your neighbor, call the police immediately if you see any illegal or suspicious activity. We need that help. We want that help. We need your help. And again, you know, I hope everybody joins me in thanking God for many blessings. We have many here. So thank you.
Thank you, Bo. Law Director?
Thanks, Randy. Because Justin asked earlier today, there is no update on the pipeline at this point. The case was argued before the Ohio Supreme Court on March 31st. Typically, their decisions come out sometime between 4 and 6 months. Sometimes it's sooner, sometimes it's a lot later. There's really no way to gauge on when the decision might come out, but it is pending. And the city of Blue Ash and the No people in Reading were the 3 parties that appealed. And right now, it's still pending. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
I think it's peculiar, I wanted to comment on the law director, that this is before the Supreme Court of Ohio, is that correct? And you don't know when a final decision is going to be made, I guess, is that correct?
No, it would be a guess, and like I said, they usually come out between 4 and 6 months. 4 months would be the end of this month, 6 months would be the end of September.
So, in reality, I guess the possibility exists that all the Duke has done in tearing up streets and putting in pipelines and new curbs, and that could be fruitless if you win your argument.
Well, that was certainly our position, but we'll see. You know, I don't know what they'll do if they get ruled against. They they obviously have some kind of backup plan, but I don't know what it is.
I guess I'm too much of a conspiracy theorist. They already know how it's gonna go, or they wouldn't have spent millions and millions of dollars all up and down the road, getting ready and everywhere else. It's frustrating to me.
Well, Tony, when-
And it is, things come up in this city, things come up with the pipeline, things come up all over the place, and, things don't go in a direction that you expect. I compliment you. I think Bob actually watched your presentation before the Supreme Court, and he was very impressed. And I overheard you tonight that a couple of the jurists were at least asking questions. But
I think it's
Duke
gonna
knows
be-
where the answer is going to go, or they would.
That's right, Tony.
Multi-millions of dollars. It is just ridiculous and frustrating. And
Well, we asked for.
same thing applies when we deal with some of the city things that are going on here. I mean, I don't want to get into all that tonight either, but I get
We asked for a
frustrated.
stay when we filed the appeal, and that was denied. And once the stay was denied, then Duke was free to do what they wanted to do.
Well, I'm not faulting you.
Well,
Couldn't get a
this is,
restraining order,
this
could you?
is more of a historical thing than anything else. Duke did, Duke did allow that they would not stand on mootness in the event that they got it completed before the decision came out. So at least there's that agreement that we have with them. But, the bottom line is if the decision goes against them, it's not the first pipeline that's been abandoned. But, I'd like to be optimistic. I'm fairly realistic on these things.
I would say so.
The city of Cincinnati and Hamilton County chose not to appeal. One of the reasons they chose not to appeal is they had hired outside counsel to deal with it. And Brian Pacheco from Blue Ash and I were working for wages.
Well, I thank you for that.
So-
You did a good job.
Okay. Tony?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about the treasurer's report. Mel sent it out to everyone. I guess you got it. He sent it out. And what's interesting, he's showing that our percentage of increase in individuals' income taxes at this point in June is 35.6% higher. We took in $134,000 in June. But what you have to be careful about on the report, and that's comparing 2020. When you look at 2019, 134 compared to 115. And then, of course, you look at profits and business income was 21% higher, 0.6. But it's actually almost identical within $100 of 2019. So we're getting back to where we were a year or two ago, the same way with the 2021 versus 2019, we're 484 versus 463. So when we say 9.9% increase, it appears that which we are compared to last year, but not really 2 years ago. So we got a ways to go. And of course, the total 21.8 growth, it's 706 versus 665 in 2019. So we are ahead, and I'm pleased to say that to 19. But in submitting our budget and in our appropriations, we were looking for a 5% growth over the past couple of years. I don't know that we're there compared to 2021 compared to 2019. But it's certainly optimistic, and I know that they're doing a great job. And I guess thanks to Sabrina, I don't want to steal her thunder at all, but apparently I don't know how our great-grandchildren and grandchildren are ever going to pay back all these stimuluses they want to come up with. But now I understand that they're in the works, that there may be monies that'll come down through the system again from the federal government, which we may get some at some point in time. I believe last year, if I'm correct, you correct me again, Sabrina, because I can't remember it off the top of my head as accurately as I should. I think we had about $500,000 or $600,000.
Yeah, about 577,000 last
My
year.
memory's pretty good still. So, but that was the stimulus money we got, and
Yeah.
that helped us get through last year. And you know, it is frustrating when you see other states that never really shut down at all, and held their own. I know South Dakota only has a 2% unemployment rate. So that would be basically the treasurer's report, and then what he told you in the letter you announced already concerning the use of data that goes to the treasurer's office is totally confidential. No one's entitled to get that data outside of that office. And so I think they're still doing an excellent job, but that's all I have on the treasurer's side of the report. And since it goes to me for the committee, I guess I'm first on the list. Is that correct?
Sabrina.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm bragging you up, and I forgot to include you. Apologize, Sabrina.
Our auditor's report, Sabrina.
Thanks. I just have a couple of quick things. Everyone should have received the financial reports through June last week. So I'm trying to stay on top of being able to close those. It does get hard as we have our quarterly purchases and our half-year purchases that happen. But in order to close that down helps me get started earlier for those, to get those paid. So as we look towards July, you know, I have a couple things that are due soon, which are the sales tax, which come from pool and water meters. But because of the water meter project, that's kind of put a stop at the sales tax that we would have to pay on those. So it's pretty much just the pool this time around. So that's nice to have. And just a reminder, you know, it's already July. So by December 3rd, all the discretionary purchases by the different department heads, if you guys work with them, should be done in my office, purchased with an invoice by December 3rd. So this back and forth time, you know, is the time where we kind of like reel in the end of the year purchases. So I just want to give everyone that reminder, and that allows me to work on the final purchases for the end of the year, and maybe some things like workers' comp that goes on the credit card in the end of December, but it's not paid until January on purpose. So that way we can reach the kind of rebate that's kind of along with that 3 to 5% is usually what they give for that. So in different years, it's been anywhere from $121,000 to over 200, maybe $206,000, depending on where our claims are through workers' comp. So I know it's only July, but it kind of feels like Christmas in July to me every time I go through this process. So I just kind of want to give the public an update on that. So we've got 6 months down. Purchases and expenditures are right where appropriations kind of sit pretty well for all the departments. Any hiccups have been, yeah, we knew that might be a hiccup, maybe didn't know how much that would cost. So now that's kind of trickling down. Different department heads kind of know their bigger purchases that they're trying to do before that time. And of course, as you guys know, that are leads of your committees, that I work with each of those department heads for those. So I think that's about it for my department for now. So like I said, just working on the last 6 months of the year already.
Okay,
Thank you.
Can you repeat how much we received from stimulus?
Yeah, so last year we received $577,000 from stimulus, and we have about $17,000 left in our COVID fund, a little over that. So Patrick is kind of working to figure out what he wants that utilized for, and of course we'll come to council and see. We were very safe with the first $577,000 shortfall of the 17, and it kind of went towards wages of our first responders. So if it was over $750,000, it would mean you would have to have another audit, which also is another cost. So every time that happens, the Rescues Act that's out right now, the first tabulation was over $2 million for the city of Reading. It has already been cut in half at $1 million, and that's the reason why it's still a working document. So we haven't received total of what we'll receive this year, but it is nice because we're going into a 2-year audit next year for 2020 and 2021. So right now the numbers are looking like we'll have to have a single audit for that amount. And the reason why it dropped from 2 million to 1 million already before any more kind of investigation is because they opened it up to villages and townships in Ohio. So whether we like it or not, I mean, that's kind of where it's shaking down, whether we want the money or not. I'll be honest and say at my finance officer conversations in Sandusky in mid-June, there were only 2 different townships that did not take the money. So these, you know, conservative, not conservative, anyone in between, everybody has saw that there's nothing we can do to stand up whether we want the money or not, to take it or not take it. And I've had conversations with Mr. Gertz, and I think Mr. Fischester was there for a couple of them about that point, that, you know, everyone is kind of taking it, whatever shakes down to the different municipalities. And it was big enough that villages and townships wanted to fight for their piece in this next round, even though they were the more vocal for not wanting it. So that's the updates that I have for that. But as soon as that number is, you know, the treasurer's office and I will alert council for what that next number will be. But we did also receive a lot of kickbacks from workers' comp last year too. So as we look at our general fund and our city earnings tax fund, those are sitting pretty healthy from the 6 years that I've been here. So good question.
Thank you.
Randy,
Yes, Don.
you don't look at us over here very often.
I try not to.
I just want to clarify that all that money, 577,000, wasn't exactly money that went for wages. There was a lot of additional expenses for the fire department during the pandemic, so
Yeah,
it
for
wasn't
the-
exactly,
Yep,
you know,
and
that they came into a whole bunch of money.
So, right, correct. So I would blanket it and say that it, you know, PPE was a big cost, but also you're right. For, like, if you think of the thought of first responders and that's who got the money, because it was one of the can't touch you on an audit question, because that's the other fear. You know, you didn't want to take more money and things, and now they're going through the audit process and things are being dinged back. So that means they have to give the money back as well if you spend it on a, you know, not an appropriate purchase. So yes, good point to bring up. Not all wages, some actual items for different departments were purchased with that too, but they were definitely on the shelf of automatic reimbursement. You were fine to purchase that, and that's an easy shake-up for the audit. Which we don't still, let me be clear, we still don't have finalized tabulations or ideas of what is true, what is not, what you could spend that on. And now look, that was given to us in 2020, and now we're in 2021 still having issues with that kind of conversation. So I was glad that we were a little more conservative on those shakedowns, because I wouldn't want to sit here and say, you know, through working with Patrick and different offices here at the city, we now have to send 325,000 of that back, you know, because of a reason. So it's definitely not been the easiest. Just because someone says, hey, they're giving you money, you know, it's still working legislation that's happening now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We'll go into committee reports. Finance Committee Chairman, Mr. Gertz.
Thank you, Mr. Fischester. I'm looking over thank you for providing the report here. It's gratifying to see that we're still getting at $2.5 million in the general fund as an unencumbered balance currently, and there's still money in the earnings tax fund of $1.2 million, which has been unusual. But I do want to sit down again, now that we're back in session on a regular basis with the Finance Committee, to go over the some of these expenses that I called and left a message for you. I know that the growth fund, we always had about 50,000 in there, but there's money going in there. I want to know where those receipts were coming from. Sabrina, if we could sit down, I know there were $3,118 went in past month. We're up to 81,000 in the growth fund, and that was always kind of a fund that we used in the case of we had to fall back on something. We had some cash there. And, you know, for some special project that might come down the pike that we might want to pursue. I think the citizens should be aware that the streetscape improvement project for Reading Road, I think, comes to fruition, final payment in 2023, and we owe about $100,000, I think. Does that sound pretty accurate, Sabrina, I hope?
For the streetscape?
For Reading Road, paying it off, it was 20 years. There's a 20-year payback, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 2023, is that what you said?
Yeah, I think that's
Yes,
the
that's
final.
when it'll be paid off.
So that
And we
is-
pay principal payments of 50,000 per year, and then 12,000 is like the current interest payment, all the way down to, I think our last one will be like 7,000 for the last year.
Well, where I would like to highlight what this council and past administrations have done to see to it that those funds are available. We segregated the real estate taxes from only half of the real estate. We only get $3.52 per thousand, but half of that goes into a 340 capital improvement fund, so that allows us to go forward with making capital improvements and keeping our community attractive and taking advantage of those issues. The mayor alluded to grants that we have received. I think it ought to be pointed out that the public understand that the last time there was an earnings tax increase, 1/5 of the growth from that went specifically into streets and curbs, because we were aware that unless you could prove when you filed your applications for grants that you would pony up 50% of the money, that you had a better chance of getting these grants. And so not only did we get, for instance, on Thorn Ridge Drive, a $1 million grant, we also got $1 million worth of financing for 20 years at no interest. So it's because of what we have done in the past as a legislative and a joint effort of the executive branch to recommend these kinds of improvements that in our collection of taxes, we have about 34 accounts. And we do have monies that we receive for collecting for the use or that the people enjoy for their sewage disposal. And so our office does collect that money for them when we get compensated for that. And that gives us an ability to put money over into what we call the sewer service fee fund, which currently has almost $700,000 in it. So we have done things wisely as a council, in manner of how we've planned our financing, and I take a certain amount of pride in participating in that very directly and coming up with those plans. So it is good and proper that we have a combined effort of working administratively and with the legislative branch, but it is frustrating as well. I have an ordinance on the floor tonight which deals with Benton Street, and it's a community development block grant. If you all are familiar, I hope you've gotten it and read it. That grant was for the year of 2019 and 18, and it was brought before this council back in, I think it was November or December, that this had to happen. They gave us, because of COVID, additional time to be able to spend the money. I think it's $144,000 if I remember correctly. And we advised the administration of that reality. Here we are, it's got to be spent, I believe, sometime in August. And here we are still trying to make sure that we get a project in place that we can not lose those funds. So, I'm not here to cause more controversy than necessary, but it is frustrating. And I'm not going to be a hypocrite.
I think we'll leave it at that.
Pardon?
And we'll leave it at that.
You can leave it wherever you want, Randy, but I'm going to state what I have to state because I think it needs to be said. You let the mayor go on for almost a half an hour to speak, and I think it's appropriate that a council person, since this is a legislative branch, have an opportunity to speak as to some of these realities.
I think you've done that over the past
I
3
continue, and I
months.
will continue. It's my right.
Limited.
I worked to get elected to this position, and I think that the people in the community ought to know where we stand, and if there are flaws that need to be brought forward, then they need to be brought forward. And that's frustrating. We didn't lose it. We bought big toys a while back because we didn't complete the project for a community development block grant the previous cycle for the restrooms at Canning Park, and you know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gertz. Buildings, Lands, and Utilities Chairman, Mr. Lindeman.
Thank you, Randy. Recently, Rumpke Waste and Recycling has made a multi-million-dollar investment in their Cincinnati Recycling Center with the installation of 3 robots. You remember we talked about in January where I brought up several different items, butter tubs and plastic things that Rumpke, they did not take before. And so I think it was about December, January, they started talking about it. Well, now they've got these 3 robots that they're the latest and greatest technology, and kudos to Rumpke. They're the first in Ohio to install these robots. And each robot can pick 70 different items a minute, and they're gonna buy 2 more robots, so they'll have a total of 5. At least that's what is projected right now. Another 2, it may be more than that later. Anyway, to view these robots in action and see the whole recycling center, you can set up an appointment with Ann Gray. She's in charge of tours. I've done it a couple of times myself. I haven't been there with these new robots, but I hope to make that journey. But her number is 742-2900, extension 7164. Again, that's 742-2900, extension 7164, and that's Ann Gray. I was going to ask Patrick about if he was able to put the bids together for waste and recycling. I made a phone call to him this afternoon, but he was in a meeting, so I didn't hear from him. So I don't know. Does anybody know?
Yeah, he
If
probably
the
needs a
bids
secretary.
have been put together for
I
the...
haven't been able to talk to
Okay,
Patrick.
he wants to get those out by the end of July, so hopefully, I'm sure he's working on it. And I mentioned earlier about a property that's been a problem. Over the last several months, we've had a problem with a property on Galt Terrace. I'm sure that pretty much everybody here knows about it. I mentioned in the previous council meetings, and I would say with much effort, the problem has been taken care of, and if you can note here, I'm saying thank you to the property maintenance officer, Rick Martin, and the fire chief, Owens, and Patrick Ross for their efforts, because I know that they all put in a lot of effort to do this. So we do give the administration credit when credit's due.
I believe the police department was even involved in some of that.
You're probably right.
Yeah. Health Department.
I left out a half a
majority of
dozen
that.
other people, so I'm sorry, but it was a...
Evidently, even the got junk people were involved.
Yeah, it was a big effort, but, you know, Katie's ordinance, I'm not real sure how that's gonna handle that sort of thing, because like I said, I didn't get involved the first day, but it was 11th of May when people were calling me and saying, what's going on at the bottom of the hill? And when I went down there, the whole front bay window was all broken out and had plastic bags on it. There was a car parked in the driveway and the windows were broken out. There was garbage strewn all the way down the driveway and in the front yard. Of course, the grass was this high. It was a mess. And it took until, I say the 30th of June, I think it was probably with the notices and final notices and all this kind of stuff. The 1st of July, they were out. So I don't know if that's going to help or
I
not.
can answer that. I actually have spoken to Patrick about that property. I know people who live directly next door who contacted me a long time ago about that property being an issue. And speaking with Patrick, one of the issues was not being able to directly have someone to contact and jumping through the hoops that we have to jump through to find that person, which is what this rental registration list is aimed to take care of. So that if there is an issue with property like that, Patrick can look it up and there's the contact information.
Right, and that contact information, from what I understand, the property owner is in Houston, Texas, and the property maintenance people are from Dayton.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it can be a problem.
That becomes an issue.
And I think, you know, with the government saying that you can't evict anybody because of COVID-19. And you've got apartment building owners that are paying the bank. The bank hasn't come to them and said, hey, get it, you don't owe us any money. But then the government's saying that the people that are taking advantage of the apartments don't have to pay their rent. Anyway, I'm getting off on a little tangent here, so I think that's all my report.
Thank you. Anybody have questions for Don? Thank you, Mr. Lindeman. Laws and Contracts Chairwoman, Ms. Adichico.
I think we skipped Mr. Powell.
Oh.
Or Zuni.
No, they got you up.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, Dave.
Oh, okay.
I can't read, I didn't put my glasses on. Zoning, Planning, Environment, Mr. Powell.
All right, thanks, Randy. The issue of the grocery ads that are thrown out continue to be an issue that is brought up. I would like to have a committee meeting to discuss that and a possible remedy for that. Katie, are you and Tom available on the evening of the 20th, say at 6:30 for a committee meeting?
Actually, I don't think am I still on your committee? Or is it Mr. Gertz that's on your committee?
I'm not on that committee.
Okay. No, I
Yeah.
believe
Yeah,
you
you're
are
right.
on it.
All right.
I am available.
Okay.
When do you want to do this?
6:30 on the 20th.
Okay, I'm there.
Okay. Also, at the same meeting, I would like to discuss little libraries and the possibility of getting them actually specified in the zoning code. So I have some ideas on that I'd like to discuss with you guys. I'm also going to be speaking with Pat about the zoning code modifications that were brought to our attention earlier, find out where he stands as far as running them back through the Planning Commission because of the issue with the notice. If they were not going to be doing that soon, I was probably going to take up the issue myself, run them through council, and then send it to the Planning Commission. But I want to communicate with Pat so we're not duplicating efforts at the same time. If they're going to be scheduling a meeting on it soon, then we'll probably just wait to hear it back from them. So I will be speaking with Pat on that. So that is it for this evening.
Randy, before you go any further, I'm sorry, I neglected to ask my committee if they could meet, since we're having a meeting on the 13th, would it be possible to have a meeting before that meeting, about 6:30
Yes,
on the 13th? Would that
I
be
can
good?
make that.
Dave?
Yes.
Good, okay. So we're going to have a committee meeting on the 13th at 6:30.
Okay. Did you get that, Carla? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Powell. Now we can move on to Laws and Contracts Chairwoman, Ms. Adichico.
Thanks, Randy. Really, most of my report has already been discussed at length earlier in the meeting. Just wanted to mention that tonight is the second reading of the rental property registration. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe I've been discussing this since March. Had several committee meetings about this and posted the ordinance in its entirety on my Facebook page and Mr. Powell's Facebook page. It's been discussed. I've received a lot of feedback from people, a lot of positive feedback from people. And sadly, a lot of people who have dealt with properties, like Mr. Lindeman has mentioned, that are excited about something like this happening and see it as a step in the right direction. Again, this is something that's in our city's master plan, and so I'm just hoping that we can move forward. Other than that, I have something that I'd like to bring up during the new business portion of the meeting tonight. That's all I have.
Dave?
Just a question, Katie, on that. Something Don brought up that I've kind of been churning over a little bit while the meeting's been going on. As far as the implementation of this, I can't recall in our committee, I know we talked about this database and all that, but have we talked who specifically was going to be implementing that?
Yeah, I talked to Patrick about that.
Okay.
And it would go through our website
It'd go
developer
through.
right now.
Okay.
That doesn't start right away, does it?
No, the deadline is December, I believe believe it's December 1st.
Don?
Just looking at the registration form, I think that you need to add a few things on there. If you're gonna get, my son owns a 12 unit, so if you put a person's name on there, it's not gonna say what apartment he's in. So I've
Right,
just
so-
noticed a few things that maybe you might wanna add.
Yeah, and that would fall under the apartment complex, which if you look at that, there's a box you check. And as I discussed with Patrick and in our committee, the idea would be if you check that box for apartment complex, it would kick you over and you just list building numbers, an address, and then your contact information. So you
Would
don't
one
have to-
building can be considered a complex?
It's anything over a 4-family.
Okay. You might wanna be more specific.
Yeah, and that's not the final copy, that's just kind of what I threw together as an idea, looking at what other cities have on their websites, and definitely, I think I even have things highlighted on there that would be changed.
You know, you said the county doesn't really, you can't use that to your advantage, and I'm thinking, if there's no teeth in this, how do you expect that those same people that Dave was talking about, I don't know who he was referring to when he said there's so many units that they don't register correctly, and they don't do this and they don't do that. If there's no penalty for them, how, I mean, I'm thinking down the line, there may be a penalty. I don't know that how many people are gonna appreciate that, but.
There is $100
It
if they
is?
don't
They don't.
register.
It's in the ordinance.
Is it?
It's in the
Yeah.
Okay,
order.
I'm sorry. So those people, you'll find those people you're talking about. You already know who they are. Did you turn those into the county?
I have not yet. I just discovered it recently, so
Okay.
little occupied during the day a lot of times.
Sure.
so.
I had a question. I didn't know, Mrs. Adichico, and we're into July. Do we have any contact with the school board or anyone concerning or have maybe they paid for the use of the stadium? I think it was $25,780 or something they're supposed to pay annually. Do you know if that's been discussed for any adjustment or any communication about that? And I'm looking to, my grandson plays on the football team, so I obviously want to be involved with knowing that they're contributing their fair share. Now, the other thing I was going to explore with Sabrina at a later date is the accumulation. Is that the accumulation that's going into the stadium fund, do you know?
That would be a question for Sabrina.
know?
For
correct?
what?
Why?
That's a
The
question for the
schools-
treasurer's office, but what is the question specifically?
I'm trying to determine if the school board has paid they're supposed to pay it I got
I
it
think
wrong.
last year we found out that they are putting it into the general fund of the stadium fund. Last year.
They put the money into the general fund?
The general stadium fund
Yes.
code, yes.
That's what they put in last year, but I think there's additional monies that's been going in. I guess we don't know whether they paid for this year.
No additional monies, and I haven't looked through all the spreadsheets from
Okay.
the treasurer's office.
Well, I'll look into it,
Yeah.
but I don't recall that ordinance. Did it have an automatic increase?
It
No.
did.
Pardon?
It did.
Yes, it did, 3%.
Okay, so I guess we're going to look and see whether that's being put in there appropriately. Maybe that's talked about in the committee report again, I guess. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Ms. Edichico. My report is public health and safety. I'll cut this a little bit shorter since we are running a little late. I am one of them that gets my report from administration. It's the only way I can get numbers. For the month of June, the fire department made 219 EMS responses and 42 fire responses, 12 of which were all calls, for a total of 261 responses. And they continue to be busy. I looked it up just before because it got knocked out again. They've had 16 runs since 8 o'clock this morning. So our fire department is extremely busy. Some things that's been going on with them. The chassis, remember way back, Chief Owens came to council about buying Blue Ash's chassis and remount and everything. Well, the chassis finally came in. That was delayed because of the computer chip issues. So it's on its way. We expect delivery sometime late September. All of their ground ladders, the aerial ladder and hose testing has all been completed. Those are all done on an annual basis. Firefighter paramedic Stroll coordinated a bike safety event held June 13th. Lieutenant Fischesser managed the fireworks display on June 27th, and multiple birthday parades were conducted. For the police, for the month of June, the police department made 1,467 calls for service, 48 auto accidents, 262 total charges filed, with 181 of those being original charges. Citations issued were 15 to Arlington Heights Court, 7 to Hamilton County Court, 1 to Juvenile Court, and 143 to Reading's Mayor's Court, for a total of 169 citations. During routine traffic stops, officers made numerous arrests on various charges, including OVI, drug possession, and loaded firearms. Officers responded to the 9200 block of Reading Road for a subject stabbed. The suspect was located after a foot pursuit and taken into custody. There's a problem in the county, it's county-wide, with catalytic converter thefts, and it's hit us a couple of times down on the south end. And the detectives continue to assist road officers with various felonies, and they also continue to monitor drug investigations in the city and the village. If you want to see further, Carla will have it in the minutes of all the various operations for the police and fire. And finally, just another reminder that August 3rd is National Night Out. That is my report. Any questions?
The chassis and cab, how much was that?
The what?
The chassis and cab, how much was that going to be? And that's coming out of the fire capital fund?
Oh, I have no idea. Yeah, it would be coming out of there. I have no idea what it cost.
I guess they're
It
paying
was
that
in
off.
that ordinance, but
Yeah, but I mean, they're paying that off over, or is that a lump sum? I don't remember.
I think that's a lump sum payment, Tony.
Right, I think it was something like $5,000. It wasn't, enough to outfit the whole thing.
Right.
Right, we're just getting the chassis.
Yeah, he's saving, if I recall, he's saving close to $90,000 doing it this way.
Getting the rest of the equipment from Blue Ash, wasn't it?
Right. Thank me. Okay, Service Chairman, Mr. Albrecht.
Thank you, Mr.
Fischesser.
Yes, sir. I was going to call you president, but the one-ton dump truck that we ordered late last year has finally come in. As I mentioned, I think last month, there was problems with some chips, but it's finally in, and they are doing the outfitting now, so it should be put into service soon. I talked with Daryl, and he indicated that there's going to be a need for another one-ton dump truck. Last year, they requested 2, and we finally got around to ordering 1, but he's indicating that there's going to be a need for a new one, so we need to take a look at that. He's also indicating, and I know they've been talking about it with the administration, to purchase a mini excavator, and that will help to keep one of the backhoes that we have from deteriorating to the point where we can't use it. So hopefully we can get that mini X, which has a lot of ways that the individuals, the service department can use it, and especially in very tight quarters. The service department, I failed to mention this a couple meetings ago, they've been doing their annual inspecting and cleaning and repairing and replacing of catch basins. As you may remember, they are supposed to do this with every catch basin in the city every year. So they have been in the process of doing this. They've repaired some water main breaks at Clark Road and on 3rd Street. And the test, as I mentioned again a couple meetings ago, the test for the mechanic has been put off to the end of July because they only had 3 people take it or register for it the last time. Only 2 took it and both of them failed. So we're looking forward to getting that test taken and getting somebody employed because we basically have one person to take care of all the pieces of equipment that we have in the vehicles. So that's it for tonight. So hopefully we can get some of those things purchased, especially before I leave.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Tom.
So this mechanic position is a new position for the service department, is that correct?
Well, it's replacing the one that retired. We've always had 2 mechanics, and one of them retired, and we just didn't fill it in.
It's usually a problem when we have snow emergencies, right? Because you have one mechanic working on the trucks, and then if he can't come in, or
as
12
I
hours.
mentioned
How long
before,
have we been with one?
probably 6 or 8 months. It's been a while. We wanted to give the test, and they didn't get around to doing it. And like I say, they gave it in June, but the people that took it did not pass, so they have to give it again. And it's going to be at the end of July when the test is actually given. So hopefully they can get some people to pass it, and because it's a very good position, as Tony always mentions. The fact of the matter is that we do have some good salaries, we have excellent benefits, and we need that person because we do a lot of work up there with a lot of pieces of equipment and vehicles, and right now we only have one person that's really qualified to work on them.
I did want to comment too, I saw them out doing a lot of the catch basin repairs, not just cleaning them, they're reconstructing them, and we do have a highly qualified service department. For the number of people they have, they do excellent work, and I thank Darrell Courtney, Chief of Public Works, and our personnel that are employed with us that do great work.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Albrink. And Recreation Chairman, Mr. Tom Lind.
Thank you very much. The pool remains very busy. We've had a lot of new families that have joined the pool, and the daily attendance is much higher than the last couple years, not just the COVID, but the last couple years. It's been much higher. As of yesterday, July 5th, we're still getting family members joining, so I think that's a positive to see a lot of people joining our community pool. I would like to thank, the City of Reading, the American Legion, the fireworks on the 27th was well attended. In the past, have I seen larger groups? Yes, but it was well attended. I thought the fireworks were great, so I wanted to thank the RC, Pyrotechnics who put it on. They did a very good job again. I thought it was a very good show. And again, as the mayor talked about, he would like council to look into the possibility of hiring another full-time parks employee. I'm very interested in that. So what I was interested in is, so if they're asking council to look into that, I'm assuming then I could just put an ordinance on the board saying that we want the safety service director to hire another parks full-time employee and see if it passes, and if it does, then it's a go?
I would look at the
You'd have
list.
to come up with where the money's gonna come from.
Well, I thought you had to
Well,
first
that would be
see,
the general fund.
I think that they're already, you have to look and see what they're all about, whether we already have an ordinance allowing how many employees in each department. There already may be eligibility for that, and then the question is up to what the administration wants to do with the number of employees they can hire. I don't know that off the top of my head. You'd have to look at that first, and then you could,
I feel like it's bounced back and forth because it's something that I said, yeah, I think I've been requesting a parks position. And then like today I hear, we've been telling council to give us a park position. Well, am I the one just to just put it on and say, do it? Or, I mean, how does that, and that's why I ask you about this mechanic. Do I feel that the service department probably needs 3 mechanics? Yeah. So I'm just gonna put an ordinance saying, let's do 3 mechanics. I don't know. I mean, we could say, hey, does Patrick need a secretary? Sure as hell. I'm gonna put an ordinance down saying, hire a secretary for this such amount. But I don't know. I need money to tell. I need a lot of groups of people saying, this is the amount of money we got. This is the only thing we can do. If you want to do this, I need their cooperation, not just to say, this is what we need. Did I know that, I mean, you talk about, we all know what departments need help with.
Have you talked with?
Point to everyone.
I mean, I would
talked
love
with-
to hire employees and say, put an ordinance out there. And if I don't, I guess I get blamed because, well, I told them that I wanted that position. Okay.
Did you talk
I
with?
want that position too. I've been telling you, I want that position. So who gets the blame? I don't really know. I mean, I've been here 10 years and I don't know. It seems to go back and forth. It confuses me in a lot of ways. Do I get my information mostly from Susan Slavely, who's in charge of the parks? Yeah, that's where I get most of my, he's right. But there's a lot of questions that when I get, yeah, she tells me request another parks position. Okay, she didn't tell me hire another, put an ordinance for a parks position. She didn't tell me that. She's like, I think it needs to be discussed. I've been discussing it for a while. I do think there needs to be another full-time parks position. I felt that for a while. I mentioned it a couple months ago on, when I unmuted myself, they said, hey, and the mayor said, we're looking into that. He told me the administration was looking into that. But then I never received any other information after that. But now I get a report from the parks telling me, yeah, the council needs to look into hiring somebody.
Have you talked to Daryl Courtney? I think that's still over his department, is it not?
It is. The parks file under service.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
I mean,
would-
the service would tell you they need how many workers?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I'm ready to give Courtney 6 positions. I'll put an ordinance to do it. I don't think administration can make it happen, but hell, I'll put it down there.
Randy?
Well, you gotta be responsible.
Don?
Well, for 2 years, we've been talking about the building department, and Dan Brooks was sitting out here, and he's saying, for $10,000, I could get a part-time person, and it would go a long way in helping me in my department. Well, as my understanding, and I have to say, I thought the administration could hire somebody. I mean, I think that they can spend up to $50,000, so they can't hire somebody for $10,000 and say, okay, you're gonna help Dan Brooks.
You got to create the position.
Can they
Do
do
we
that?
create
I
the
mean, we
position?
could,
Yes.
I mean,
we
like,
could pass an ordinance saying hire.
I mean, like Tom said, I mean, sure, I'm be more than happy. I'm short
Last
term.
I heard on that, to be honest
Be
with
hiring
you,
people for the service department and the parks
I've
department.
been wanting to help Dan Brooks from the get, because God knows, we need a lot of help in that department.
You know-
Anybody deals with that department, they know. They're only here twice a week. So we sure as hell need a lot of help in there. Am I willing to throw down, okay, $10,000 for a part-time position? Do I need to write an ordinance to make that happen?
I think you do.
That-
Well, okay, because administration said
I
that
think
that's
there
wrong?
was, the last I recall of the assistant for Dan Brooks was, it went back to Dan that write up something so that we know, who to
That's my
hire.
understanding. I asked the administration,
And
let's
that
give a
kinda-
breakdown.
And then he said, well, no, I don't want to hire him, I want administration to hire him. So, I mean, they got into a little,
And that's why I thought it was on hold. I was waiting for more information from the administration. And then all of a sudden, I feel like I'm getting blamed for not hiring a $10,000 position
I
for
don't
that.
think that. I just
Well, I
think-
mean, as he dropped the mic and says his speech and leaves, okay, it's all good. Yeah, I'm responsible for not having that $10,000 position. I'll take that on my shoulder. That was my fault. Even though you said I need it, but I'm not gonna exactly tell you how to get it done.
Right.
Frankly, I think that this went back several years ago, and the gentleman sitting right out there, Mr. Ashbrook, worked very diligently to do some analysis of of that whole building department. We were looking into whether we would contract it out. then we saw the fact that $90,000 came in from the school for building permits, and we analyzed, what that would cost, whether or not we contract with the county to do the work. And I mean, a lot was discussed and what was taken, but that's, I know you can't get mad again, but that's why I like to have the second and fourth meetings, because you can bring in and we'll spend the whole night talking about the building department, where we want to go and what we want to achieve, and have everybody on board. And
How many times have we done that?
well, but
I wanted to-
I don't know that we've ever done it where we sat down all as a council, and it's just like, when you have a piece of legislation, or it goes to, Mr. Nesbitt says puts everything in a committee. Well, that's fine and dandy, but the committee are 3 people, and it still takes 7 people to really tear it to pieces. I don't care if you had to come here on a Saturday morning and spend all day and talk about the building department, bring in people that are qualified in the field, do the analysis. And to answer your question, I would probably have to look at it more than once to determine whether we need another person in the Parks Department. But I think what's been said is that if the legislation already exists and they're already allowed to hire a mechanic up there, that's in existence. It's been in existence. 6 months ago, it was in existence. So you can't blame council for not hiring them. Now, there's some analysis that the administration can do and say, well, we can hire 5 people or 3 people or 2 people or 1 person, whatever it is, they still have to make their own determination if they're going to decide to hire them. You can't point the finger at council then if we've already provided the opportunity to hire them. But then, as Randy said, if the position doesn't exist, then we have to go ahead and we have to pass an ordinance to create a position and a pay scale and put the numbers in. But when we talked about reviewing it and you get into the details of the fine questions, then, well, the mayor left, but, there has to be an opportunity to sit down. I would like to know about the budget, but I didn't really know that I'm going to get a call back to go over all these. I have probably 8 or 10, 12, 15 questions on the budget of how it came into existence. And I blame myself anymore. For 40 years or more, we relied on the safety service director, and I did them. Denny drafted the budgets, and Sherman drafted the budgets. It's always fallen in that person. Maybe it should it's council passes the budget, but it's fruitless if you don't know what their requests are. This budget was available to us in April, and the method that I don't know, Denny, am I correct? Did you not used to meet with the police chief and ask him what they all wanted? And then we used to meet, and we even had council meet with the service chief of public works or the fire chief and say, what are the needs you're saying you want? And then you had a meeting in the minds of the administration and the council, and you designed a budget then that would pay for that. Now, it's true, we have been in positions where we didn't have the great financial position just to go and arbitrarily hire somebody. To be blunt, you hire a policeman, you not only pay them $60,000, $70,000 a year, but you got to figure all the benefits. You hire a park guy, probably minimum it's going to be $40,000, and then you got probably 30%, 35%. Might as well figure in benefits. So do we have the money? That's part of the analysis. But you got to start with the people who say they need it. Does administration, there isn't any sense for us to beat our heads against the wall if they're going to say, well, we're not going to hire them.
Well, I got a report from the parks, which is administrative, which is where I get some of my reports, saying they need it. So I'm assuming it's okay, so.
But they don't have the power to hire, right? That's
Okay,
the service
so
director.
then how do I give them the power to hire?
Well, you can pass all the legislation you want. They don't have to hire them. You can't, we can say hire 25 more policemen. It doesn't mean that the service director is going to go out and hire them.
So I could write an ordinance and say, I'll give you permission to hire another full-time parks, and just leave it then it's on them if it doesn't happen.
I would say that's correct.
Okay, I'll see what I can write up, but
Well,
get it on in 2 weeks.
You might as well go and make sure that the people that you have the service director and the mayor, they're going to make the final decisions of whether they're going to hire or not, but Darrell Courtney, he's down, what's he down, Denny? 5 people?
7.
7
I'm
over the
assuming,
years.
You know, the parks.
No, this is
He'll
a,
throw the parks, if he hired new for parks, he's able to use them in other positions depending on if the parks.
now here's a rhetorical question I asked Courtney when I see him. He says he's short 5 people. I'll tell you, the people he's got, they do a bang-up job. They still got all the work done that I know of. I mean, you know, you don't want to be overloaded with people either. I mean, maybe I'm unfair. I ain't gonna say which county departments I see. Sometimes I go out and, you know, it's the old joke, and I won't say which ethnic group, how many guys does it take to put a light bulb in? You know, 3, 1 to hold the bulb and 2 to turn the ladder, you know. So you gotta be careful. I don't know the answer, you know, I mean, but we're legislative. You can create the foundation, but then we do have a legal responsibility or financial responsibility to say, you know, do we have the money? Right now, I just told you we had $202.5 million in the general fund. Now, you know, we ought to sit down as a council, and as not just the finance committee, the whole council, and say, you know, why do we have $2.5 million, and we're going to need Sabrina and the treasurer and go through, or why we're flush right now. You know, we were worried a year ago that we were going to have to go out and borrow money, and thanks to Sabrina and Dave Stevenson and Mel, they went and talked to the banks, and we were in a position where we were going to be able to borrow money rather easily and at a good rate. Fortunately, we never had to do it. That was a blessing, you know. But it is frustrating. That's what I tried to say earlier. It's just why the ordinance is on the floor tonight. It's frustrating. Anyway, you don't want to hear any more.
Well, to end my report, I am very supportive of hiring another person full-time for the parks, and I would hope to get that done. I also hope, at the beginning, I asked the parks to give me a bid to replace the roof on the small shelter at Voorhees. I have yet to receive any numbers on that, so I could put it forward to get it done, but I hope, and I have texted and asking for those numbers before, so these are things that I hope to get done. I'll work with people that know more than me to see if I can get that done.
Talk to Courtney about it.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Anybody have any other business, council business? Dave?
You know, after hearing a lot of this discussion, as long as Tom's been on and he still doesn't understand the process completely about who has to do what, maybe something that I would like to see in the future is every employee of the city have a job description. Here's what you do, here's your responsibilities, and have a very clear, everybody has a copy of it so you know who to go to, who's responsible for that. Yeah, I think something like that would be
I believe
very
most
helpful.
do, Dave. I can tell you the fire department does.
That's part of the Civil
This
Service
is a
Commission.
description. There's
They
always
already
position
have
descriptions
that.
out there.
Civil Service Commission's responsible for
I
developing.
mean, even the lifeguards have
They have job descriptions.
job descriptions.
I don't know
That's
about
fine,
part-time
but
people.
Tom was asking, okay, well, council, how do we do this? Okay, well, who's responsible for creating a position? Who's responsible for that? And it's unclear. You know, when I showed up, I didn't get a, hey, you're a new councilman. Here's a little packet. Even new councilmen coming on, anybody, a list of phone numbers.
Me too.
Of the important contacts. I didn't get that. That would be so helpful to somebody coming into this position because, you know, it's kind of like, here you go, you know, and you're expected to perform, but if you don't have all the information and it's difficult to find it, how can you perform? And that's been a big frustration of mine that I've had since I got appointed and eventually elected. So that's something that I would like to see improved in the future for sure.
Yes, Katie.
Something for new business. I just would like to continue discussing updating the bridal district. Since we have allocated the grant money to pave the portion of the street, I'd like to look into paving Benson from Reading Road to the bridge, which I believe there's an ordinance tonight regarding that. And possibly also looking into redoing sidewalks and other updates to the streets. I brought this up at the last meeting, so it kind of got kicked down the road to this meeting. I've stressed the importance of the district many times. I received a copy of the district's master plan that was from Linda Fitzgerald. We worked on this in 2019 with other members of the district. Some of the things I'd like to look into is working with the district on streetscaping, including new flower pots, trash cans, new lights in the trees, and new sidewalks. It's also mentioned in their master plan a desire to bury the utility poles and increase parking. Other areas where the city and the district can work together would be more policing, better and more noticeable crosswalks, and possibly reworking the zoning code to implement building design standards. I'm not sure what committee that this falls under, and that's kind of where we left it at the last meeting. It's definitely something that I would like to help with if I'm able. And again,
Don raised his hand, so I'm guessing his committee.
I just wanted to add something.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with President Nesbitt after the meeting. I was pretty quick to the trigger when he asked me to put that into my committee, and I said, definitely no. First, I thought, you know, I'm really a short timer, I mean, so to speak. But I had some more thoughts about it, and I called my committee, which might have been the first thing I should have done, and asked them if they were interested. And they said both of them, they are interested. So I had further conversations with Mr. Nesbitt about it, and he said hold off until he gets back, and he's got some things he wants to say.
okay. Yeah, that's fine, we can
That's
discuss
why I
it.
didn't bring it up.
Yeah, on a side note, actually I have a note here that I just think it's interesting that we don't have a committee that's directly involved in economic development. And this is certainly something to talk with
Oh,
Chris about, but.
Linda Fitzgerald would definitely be involved in it for sure.
Right. Oh, yes, definitely, and members of the district. But just overall, I think it's something that we should look at adding or combining with another committee. I think it makes sense to have council involved, or at least informed on what businesses are coming to the area and what projects are in the works and what our economic developer is working on. But that does sound like something to wait until the next meeting when Chris is here to discuss.
I think we have such a tremendous base to work with. This wedding district, in case you don't know, is the largest wedding district in North America. I didn't say Reading and Sharonville. North America. We have something huge to begin with. And when you were saying, you suggested maybe you would like to be part of the committee, I guarantee you, if I'm going to be the chairman of the committee, everybody here in this room is going to be part of the committee. Not only here, but, well, I don't want to say too much.
Okay.
Well, that's one of the things on the fourth Tuesday of the month we started doing, but it never came to fruition.
They
We
have a
always
few
brought
Fourth
in a,
Tuesdays, Tony.
Bump
Yeah.
it up to the third Tuesday.
we brought,
They
we,
have a few of those.
Because
This
the
could be a
third
huge
Tuesday, we don't
project.
do,
This could be
committee
very, very
report.
big.
We used
It's
to bring
already
in,
big.
we used to bring
Bridal
in
District is already big.
Lyndon
And it could
Fitzgerald.
be bigger.
It definitely could, yeah.
Right.
So I'll bring this up at our next meeting and see where we can go from there.
that'll be fine. All right, why don't we move into legislation? Because I bet we're going to breeze right through this.
Before we proceed, I was just curious, I'd like to ask Mr. Mounts, he's here tonight. I understand they have initiated the installation of the wiring underground across the street from you.
Yes.
Has that been completed, do you?
I'm getting old. They've pulled the channels down through, and they
Conduit?
haven't. Yeah, the conduit, and they haven't pulled the wires yet. But I guess naturally they're not going to reuse those old wires, so they stay there until everything's set to do a switch over, and then I guess they'll pick a day or a couple days and maybe let some of the neighbors know when they could expect, with vacations and stuff, people leaving, whether their power's gonna be out or something's gonna come back on or whatever, but I haven't heard anything.
I just wanted, I thought I saw work going on,
Yeah,
so
no,
with
they-
that,
They've got the conduit it down, and I guess now just trying to, they haven't been there for, obviously the holidays, they weren't there today, so I guess as soon as they get back on site, I imagine that they'll probably start running some wire through those conduits. So it's going along good. The only other thing is that Is there anybody that, we, the city built that, had put that wall in between, across the street from my house on the sidewalk there, the decorative wall? That got vandalized this weekend or holiday, and they kicked the top blocks off and they shattered them. So now the police officer, I called twice. First time no one came out, but then I guess the next day I called again, and maybe they were already in track. I'm not saying they didn't do what they were supposed to, but then I noticed a police officer stopped and put the big pieces back on, but the little pieces of the puzzle, you could lift one back because they got lips on it. You can lift the one piece up and then put the piece in. He didn't do all that, but I did. The only problem is the pieces that are back up there are extremely loose. And that wall's not that tall, and the kids go running down that. So it either needs to come all the way off, or the stones that are there need to be re-glued down, get new stones that are.
Did you call City Hall with that?
Yes.
So they know about it?
Yeah, and,
Okay.
yeah. So I don't know, but see, I don't have the best rapport with the school, so I don't know, should I?
Well, City Hall, if they
I
don't
think we
do it,
paid
no
for that
problem.
when we did Bolster Drive.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is I just want to get the information and not be an adversary in giving them that information.
All
But the City Hall does know, so I'm just assuming that they'll, it'll get through. But they did have a police officer did come up and put those there, but it'd probably been best to just leave it lay, because now when you come up to it, you realize there's a danger. Now,
When'd that break?
Huh?
When'd that break?
Oh, that's been 3 or 4 days ago.
Okay, so it's been over the holidays.
Yeah, it's been over the.
So the employees haven't been here.
Yeah, but like I said, the officer did come up and put those rocks back up on there, but now it's kind of camouflaged the emergency of it. As soon as they step on it, if they go run down through, they're gonna fall off the
Might
wall.
be more dangerous now
Yeah.
than if.
I
I'll
should.
call Patrick.
I thought about going over there and throwing it back down on the ground, because at least it'd be safer. Now it's up there looking perfect, and as soon as someone goes up there, they're gonna fall.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to digress. I did forget to ask you in your report, I saw they painted the front of that crosswalk down at the library. Are they gonna do anything else? Because
I
I
talked to Patrick and I told him to get the ballast and put them in.
all along with the line of the,
Yeah.
do you have the power to tell him to do that? That's pretty good. Anyway, I would like to ask that the ordinance that I have on the floor concerning the installation of, to put the wiring underground be a third reading and not vote on it tonight. If they finish it, it's kind of water over the dam then. If that's agreeable with council.
Yeah, it's a moot point, really.
Carla, can we have the first reading, or the first ordinance? I'm sorry.
So it's third reading, an ordinance directing the Safety Service Director to secure bids for the permanent underground relocation of utilities previously installed overhead in the vicinity of Bolster Drive and Columbia Avenue in order to achieve compliance with zoning requirements of PDD number 2, the Reading Community Schools Plan Development District, and declaring an emergency.
That'll be a third reading with no action. Our
Thank you.
next ordinance, please.
An ordinance establishing a registration system for residential rental property and adult tenants and occupants thereof, this being a second reading.
I guess that'll be a first reading.
Second reading.
Second reading, okay.
Okay. An ordinance directing the Safety Service Director to advertise and take competitive bids and to award a contract for the paving and road improvements to Benson Street, City of Reading.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gertz, second by Mr. Lindeman to suspend the rules, requiring a second and third reading. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes?
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gertz, second by Mr. Powell to adopt the ordinance. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fish Escher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted. Ordinance number?
2021-22.
Our next ordinance. I believe this will be a
First.
read only.
An ordinance amending certain sections of the Reading Code of Ordinances that addresses council meetings and declaring an emergency. Sorry, was that supposed to be last?
What is this one?
Is that a first one as well?
That's, what's that?
That's the budget or what?
That's the budget.
Oh, that
Okay.
was Katie's. I didn't read the budget. I'm sorry.
Oh, it wasn't?
Yeah, I'm
Which one was
sorry.
it? What you read?
I read Katie's, an ordinance amending certain sections of the Reading Code of Ordinances that addresses council meetings and declaring an emergency.
Okay. We'll make that a first read only.
Okay.
Because technically, the declaring emergency shouldn't be in the title anymore.
And the following budget for the calendar year beginning January 1st, 2022 has been adopted by council and is hereby submitted for consideration of the Hamilton County Budget Commission.
Okay, anything else?
Just confirming, we are going to have a meeting 7:30 next week. to
7:30
discuss-
next
To
week.
discuss the budget.
the budget.
Is-
There is one thing I wanted to say is aside, which doesn't have to do with council, and that is that over the past week, St. Peter and Paul and Our Lady of the Sacred Heart have combined and are now considered Our Lady of the Valley Parish. We'll be using both facilities for a while until we get everything straightened out, but, you know, I think it'll be a good in the long run. Anything else, guys? We're done.